Would you say that Nigerians, beginning from 1960, had an idea of where they were going, by that planting it in the educational system, so that, okay, we need certain doctors in this country, we need certain amount of engineering in this country, we need to build houses, because of course, as we were living the colonial era, a lot of infrastructure were not really there in Nigeria, to be frank, because the infrastructure that were developed for only few people, for the few Westerners that were running the system, and those who they needed to manage the system. So as we are beginning to get free, we know that we need to provide for the whole of the country, not just for few people. And for us to be able to do this, of course, we needed to train people. And this can only happen through education. So the question is, did the Nigerian leaders had an idea of what they wanted from their own educational system?
Fantastic question you asked. From the onset, the idea of education was to tame the minds of Nigerians, to be good followers. The idea, as I said earlier, was not to make us plan or develop our country. The idea was just to read and write, as I said earlier. Now, what this has cost is we are not taught to plan. How many Nigerians plan? We just wake up and whatever tomorrow or today brings, we take. How many Nigerians plan as an individual, talk less of as a family, talk less of as a state or a community? We all know in the Western world, the next 100 years have been planned for. I think usually we say the next 30 years, the next 20 years. As I speak, as a country, we have no plan. And if we had a plan, if we were focused dreaming from the start, and that's what quality education gives you. Focus, vision, plan. These were not embedded in the kind of education we had. So we did not plan for our education. If you look at Singapore, anytime I talk about education, I always like using Singapore as an example. They were even in the worst states than Nigeria as a country. But they had this leader that came and structured a timetable, their educational system, put in critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills embedded in their curriculum and customize it to meet their needs today. Singapore is about the third best economies in the world. So education is key in all. What kind of education what kind of education have we had from the onset? That is a golden question. And as I said, the education, the kind of education handed down to us was absolutely intentional. We don't have a plan as a nation. Even as we speak, economically, we don't have a plan. Educational-wise, we don't have a plan. We have a lot of undergraduates out there that wants to get into the university, but they can't because they definitely university, they have the capacity and they have limited numbers they can take. So what plans? Do we have entrepreneurship plans for them? And yes, we've been talking about entrepreneurship as a country, but do we have the willpower to do what is right? We call entrepreneurship education. We have entrepreneurship even in a curriculum, but how is it taught? Is it making the youth self-reliant? So a lot of things is wrong. So I will say, as you've said in Acts 1, educational plan, we don't have one. There is none. Plan as a country, we don't have one. And that is why we are where we are today. Lagos State, I would say, is one of the outstanding states so far. They seem to be the only state, at least that I have been following, maybe because I grew up there and I lived there all my life, that seem to have a plan. I have traveled the whole of Nigeria. And a lot of states don't have any plan. I've even tried helping some state government in having a plan, a goal of helping their youth. Because if we don't train them now, there's no way you can have youth, they can help support that economy in years to come. And they bring in politics into education. So the problem we have is we have brought in politics and self-interest into our educational plan in this country. And it's because as individuals, we are very self-centered. We're not thinking of the future of the country. We're not thinking of us, the future of even our own children. We think if we send them to the best school, send them abroad, that's it. One day they will come back into this country, as I always say. And from the airport, they can be robbed or anything can happen to them because they have not had the interest of this country at heart. So going forward, I will say, the people in government now should remove politics out of education and do the needful. Get hands that can deliver and help this country rise again in the educational sector, and let us begin to rebuild. With time, we will get there. So, in answer to your questions, we do not have a plan, and we have not been planning as a nation. And presently, there's no plan, but there can be plan if we are willing to have a plan and we'll have the willpower to execute it.
Thank you for that, Regina. You see, it is very important that we look at the onset. Of course, it's true that we just started from 1960, which is 61 years ago when Nigeria got independence. Of course, we could have actually started before that because some of the problems started even before that, but at least we need to have some date in mind. So if that is a good period. If a child was born in 1960, by now, that is 61 years old. 61 years old person, at least you have gotten enough experience in life. How long do you expect to live? Of course, in the affair of nation, in nationhood, we are still very young. We are still almost a baby in terms of how people usually civilize and grow and all that. I understand that too. I'm not trying to just do a direct comparison between Nigeria and maybe some other country, maybe like the United States and all that. But of course, that does not justify where we are today. We ought to have been able to do more in every respect of our life, from education to the military, to the policing, to infrastructure, to in many respects. Of course, education play a pivotal role in this area. And you were talking about planning. And of course, the planning is evident. Look at what happened during the COVID-19 situation. The Nigerian government basically appeared as if, of course, I know it's an emergency. That is also why we have a sector that is managing emergency, because you cannot just, as a country, we cannot just exist thinking that if something strange happen, then we are going to call somebody to help us. It doesn't work like that. You are going to imagine that tomorrow there is going to be an invasion of this country from the sea. Are we ready for it? I know that there is no war now, but what if by tomorrow people invade us from the air? Are we ready for it? What if by tomorrow some bad people poison the Nigerian water? Are we having alternative? The thing is, we need to have different kind of plans. We need to prepare for option A, option B, option C, option D. If you don't have this one on the table, you are just a baby. Because if anything happens, you are going to cry to everybody, please help me. For how long are we going to continue to cry for help?